On that gloomy and unusually cold evening, I was waiting for the train on a godforsaken slab of concrete that passed for a station. I needed to go from Hollow Creek Station to Northwood Station. My old friend and classmate Caleb lives there, in this godforsaken little township tucked somewhere in the backwoods of northern Wisconsin. It was his birthday, and we had spent the whole weekend at his place. He invited some of his new friends along with me and a few of his old ones I already knew. At one point, when the two of us were alone in the living room, I figured it was the perfect moment to give him his birthday present. He checked it quickly, and then, almost as if he'd been waiting for me to hand mine over, he gave me something in return. An old pendant, made of wood, braided rope, and a dull green stone. He told me he'd meant to send it 6 months ago for my birthday, but decided he'd rather give it to me in person. I thought it was a kind gesture, thanked him, slipped the pendants in my pocket, and immediately forgot about it. I can't say life in that hole is bad. He has his own homestead, a good house with good renovations. Far from civilization, well, not that far it seems, especially when you get on the train, lean your head against the window and close your eyes. That's exactly what I wanted to do after 2 days of drinking and partying. I stood on the platform as the cold, wet wind slapped against my face and sliced through my jacket, sinking straight into my bones. A few other people were waiting with me, 3 guys and a girl, all of them joking around and laughing without a pause. I passed the time by listening in on their conversations, bits and pieces about random things. There wasn't much else to distract me anyway. The station was nothing but massive concrete slabs and a couple of crooked lampposts. Even the lights from the nearby houses weren't visible, though they weren't far away, connected to the station by a narrow, beaten-down footpath. And that was it. There was nothing else here. I don't understand how people live in a place like this. Though I never tried. Maybe you just get used to it. I don't know. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. The train was running a little late. The cold hit suddenly and sharply. I had come here traveling light, and it was hot then. But over these 2 days I'd spent here, the weather changed, and even the jacket my friend lent me didn't really help. I checked the time again and saw a small light approaching in the distance. Finally, I exulted, almost in relief. The train pulled up to the station, stopping with an unpleasant screech and hiss. The door swung open. I stepped inside and sat by the window, putting my backpack stuffed with all sorts of homemade goodies under my feet. The carriage was half empty. Behind me sat a guy and a girl, and across from them an old lady with a serious expression, reading a newspaper, and of course the little group that had waited for the train with me on the platform. As soon as we all sat down, the train jerked and started moving right away. Didn't stay long at all. God, I love when trains get moving right away. The clatter of the wheels, the lamppost flashing by outside, and the dead bulb in the carriage. The only thing to do was pull my earphones out of my pocket, turn on some music, and stare out the window until my eyes started to close. The ride was supposed to take 2 hours, more or less. I just wanted to get home as soon as possible and take a hot bath. While I watched the window and listened to some tracks, I slowly began to drift off. There was plenty of space, so I used my backpack as a pillow and stretched across the whole seat. 5 minutes hadn't even passed before I was already snoring softly, bouncing on the seat like a piece of jelly. But soon I woke up, and you wouldn't believe because of what. I simply fell onto the floor, and I hit my back hard. That, of course, snapped me awake instantly. I grimaced from the pain and tried to get up. When I finally stood, I looked around. Only that group from the platform was still in the carriage, and me, no one else. Guess the others got off earlier, I thought, and sat down again. I checked my phone and fuck, only 40 minutes had passed. I wasn't tired anymore. I thought about scrolling online, but the train was still deep in the middle of nowhere, and there was no signal at all. For a split second though, my phone managed to catch a flicker of service, and a message came through from the friend I had just visited. It read, "I'm sorry, I had to. I had no other choice but to pass it down, or it would have been me and my family." I stared at it, thinking, what the f*** is he talking about? Pass what down? Is he still high from the weekend or something? Confused, I tried sending him a message back, but the bars were already gone. After a moment, I forced myself to calm down. I still had plenty of time to kill before we got back to anything resembling civilization. Literally, because we were surrounded by miles of nothing. I needed to distract myself, or at least forget about the message for a bit. So I settled into my seat as comfortably as I could and went back to staring out the window. I watched the dark horizon for 20 minutes. Nothing but pitch blackness. Not even a single streetlight left out there. And then, suddenly, a few lights appeared in the distance, and the train began to slow down. The group of friends who got on the train with me gathered their things, and all of them stood up from their seats. Strange. For some reason I thought they were going all to the same station as me. But no, they got off in some hole just like the one I'd spent the last 2 days in. Oh well, I settled in comfortably again and got ready for the train to depart. That's when a woman stepped into the carriage, around 40, thin, dressed well, kind of modern like an average middle-aged woman. She sat not too far from me, but not too close either. Nothing special about her, or so I thought. That's how it was at first, yeah, that's exactly how it was. Not paying much attention to her, I lay down on my backpack again and fell asleep. I woke up again maybe 20 minutes later. What woke me? Not a stop, no, nothing like that. I woke because some insect was crawling on me. Right on my face, actually. Some kind of fly or mosquito, I couldn't tell. I was half asleep. It buzzed and darted around. I slapped it quickly and tried to go back to sleep. But then a thought seeped into my head through the haze of sleep. It was November. Winter was practically here. What kind of flies, let alone mosquitoes, could be around? That thought woke me completely. I opened my eyes fully and froze. There really were insects flying in the carriage, but they weren't flies. They were something strange. I had never seen anything like them. These things belonged in, I don't even know, in swamps or something. Definitely not here, and the carriage was empty now, except for me and that woman. She was sitting right in front of me. At first I thought, well, whatever, sitting or not sitting, who cares? But then, after watching her for a bit, I realized she wasn't moving at all. Not even slightly. I kept pretending to rest my eyes, but really I kept watching her, swatting away those damn insects buzzing around me. I noticed something else. Most of the insects were clustered around her, flying and crawling in a small swarm. After watching for a little longer, I finally decided to get up from my seat and walk toward her. She hadn't moved even once in the last 15 minutes. That was strange. Maybe she fell asleep, I thought as I took a small step in her direction. Alright, I'll check. I approached her and nearly stumbled backwards. She was sitting like a statue. I couldn't even call her alive. It was as if she turned to stone. No, her flesh was still flesh, still human, but she looked frozen in place like a carved figure. And the worst part was the insect gathered in her open mouth. There were so many of them already that you couldn't even see her teeth anymore. I stepped back, covering my mouth with my hand. The skin on her face looked almost pitch black in places, and her hands and neck were crawling with those things. And her whole skin tone, it was unnatural, not human. And one more thing, her eyes, they had been open this whole time, and they were staring straight at me, like in those paintings. No matter where you stand, they always follow you. It was horrifying. That disgusting, terrifying sight filled me with a strange, heavy anxiety. I wanted even more to just be home already, with the door locked and lights on obviously. But home was still far away. Not wanting to stay in the same carriage with whatever the that was, I tried to move to the next one. I had barely taken a few steps toward the door when I heard a quiet crack. I turned around and her head was already laying on her shoulder. What the f***? What is happening here? F***ing hell, she was sitting normally just a moment ago, straight and unmoving. What the hell just happened? That crack made me jump out of my skin and I needed to get out of here as fast as possible. I rushed to the door and heard another crack behind me. I had zero desire to turn around and look at her. None. But I still saw what was happening. In the reflection of the train window, one of her arms was now bent backward, unnaturally. I started yanking the handle of the door, the one that I now realized was locked or stuck. And again, crack. I looked into the window's reflection again. She was standing now, but she wasn't just standing. Her eyes were darting around the carriage like she was searching for something. I froze. The clatter of the train's wheel mixed with the pounding of my heart. That was all I could hear. She stood still again, motionless, except for those eyes still darting everywhere. I started yanking the handle of that door and, again, it was locked. I looked around the carriage again and, dear God, she was standing right behind me. I froze, completely. What am I supposed to do now? How was I supposed to get out? She was practically pressing me against the door without even touching me. And then, a different thought crawled into my head, that any movement from me would lead to nothing good, and that she was reacting to it. The train, going at full speed, had hit an unstable section of the track. It jolted so violently that the stuck door suddenly shook loose. I knew that because I felt the handle turn under my hand, not like before, when it wouldn't budge at all and felt frozen in place. I stood there like a statue, trying not to breathe too loudly. I decided to open it slowly. I gently tugged the handle and I could already feel her breath or presence or something cold behind my back. I froze again. Okay, what do? I whispered out loud in that suffocatingly uncomfortable pose. Nothing good came to mind except to rip the door open, jump into the next carriage and slam it shut immediately. So that's what I did. Counting to 3 in my head, I yanked the door open and leapt into the next carriage. A sharp jolt from the train made me slip and hit the floor, slamming my head. And I didn't even have time to close the door. She was already standing right above me. Another jolt from the train and this one made her lose balance instead and fell back. Because I was already on the floor, I stood up quickly. And at the same time, unnaturally, she stood with me. Pure sickening panic drove me. Not reason, not instinct, just raw terror. Understanding now that she reacted to my movements, I began crawling backward, and now I finally saw how she moved. It was a nightmare, a real living nightmare. She moved toward me in jerks, each jerk ending with her body snapping into a stiff, straight pose. Her arms seemed to break and then snap back into place, and the same happened with her legs. Her eyes darted around the carriage just like before, but sometimes they stopped on me, and every time they did, my whole body froze and broke out in waves of goosebumps. I froze again, and she froze with me, and after about 1 full minute, I finally twitched my leg, and she lunged at me again. I didn't wait to see what would happen. I ran toward the other end of the second carriage, and there I pulled the emergency brake. I managed to glance out the window before that and realized we were probably nearing my station already. The train screeched to a stop. I opened the carriage door and jumped outside. She came out right after me. I heard cracking and crunching sounds behind me. I ran with everything I had. I darted into the forest. Thankfully, there was a path. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight so I wouldn't smash face first into a tree. I did manage to get a little distance from her, and about 10 minutes later, I heard the train start moving again. In the distance, I already saw the city lights, and I headed toward them. My heart was still pounding like crazy. I kept walking while constantly looking over my shoulder, terrified of seeing her behind me again, but she wasn't there. After walking maybe 2 miles, I finally calmed down a little, but I still kept looking back. I made it out of the forest alive. Thank God, the road was about 300 meters ahead. Cars were driving by and finally, I'd reached civilization. I had nearly given my soul in that damn carriage. But this wasn't the end. I'm saying it like there was supposed to be a happy ending. She turned out not to be so simple, that woman from the train. I was walking along, there were these sparse trees standing on the side of the road, and suddenly I saw something moving behind them. I stopped. That same state of terror I felt in the train rushed back instantly. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. It was her again. How the hell did she get here? How is she doing this? I said out loud, my voice raised, staring at those lonely trees. And yes, I saw her head there. She was peeking out from behind a tree like a child cheating at a hide and seek. She stood the same way, watching me, only now her eyes were pointed straight at me. I picked up a huge stick from the ground and moved toward her. Fear, anger, hatred, everything mixed together inside me. But as I walked, doubts crawled into my head. What if it doesn't work? What if something goes wrong? I tried with all my strength to shove those thoughts out. She stepped out from behind the tree and moved toward me, the same way as in the train car, in sudden jerks, freezing in unnatural positions. I screamed at the top of my lungs and, swinging the stick, struck her on the head. It cracked exactly the same way it did in the carriage. She stood there for a moment, then collapsed to the ground. I started stabbing her in the stomach with the sharp end of the stick. A black oil-like liquid began to spill out of her, along with those same insects. When I finished, I threw the stick aside and collapsed next to her. "What are you?" I whispered. And right after those words, I heard another crack. She grabbed my leg with her hand so tightly that I felt her fingers digging under my skin. But thank God, all of this happened near the road. My scream, torn out of me by the pain, was heard by a driver passing by. He stopped the car and ran toward me. The creature sensed this and immediately let go of my leg, darting into the forest thicket. The driver helped me, ran back to his car for a first aid kit and gave me emergency medical treatment. When he asked what happened to me, I only told him that some thugs attacked me. I mean, what was I supposed to say? That I fought with some unholy creature? They'd send me straight to a mental hospital. The old man called an ambulance, waited with me until it arrived, and only left once they put me inside the vehicle. At the hospital, they stitched up my leg and let me rest through the night. But something still wouldn't let me relax. Insects began creeping out from the corners, and a wave of goosebumps ran over my entire body. Panic surged, and I started shouting for the nurse at the top of my lungs. The door suddenly swung open, a strip of light spilling into the room. It was the nurse. I let out a shaky, relieved breath and said, "Oh, thank you for coming." But before I could finish, blood burst from her mouth. She collapsed to the floor, and standing right behind her was the woman, frozen, staring darkly into my eyes.